Okay, all right. Shabbat shalom.
Shalom.
Shabbat shalom. We are back. We are going to be continuing with our look at the book of Exodus. Wait a second. Shemot. Let's see here. We this week are in. Let's see here. We are in the book of Exodus, the 30th chapter. We're going to go ahead and look at this chapter and deal with some of its main things going on in it. And try to see, as usual, if we're able to gain any type of spiritual applications behind these scriptures. This week, we'll be dealing with this idea that begins with the first verse over here. You shall make an altar. You shall make an altar. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and read. We'll read kind of the first half of it, and then we'll go back and talk about that part, and then we will, continue on as need be. Let me pull up over here the scriptures. We'll go from there. We can start reading over here. Let's see, verse number 1, and we'll go down to verse 21.
It says, "And you shall make a slaughter place to burn incense on. Make it of acacia wood, a cubit long and a cubit wide. It is a square and 2 cubits high. Its horns of the same. And you should overlay its top and its sides all around, and its horns with clean gold. And you shall make it from a molding of gold all around. And make 2 gold rings for it under the molding of both of its sides. Make it on its 2 sides, and they shall be holders for the poles to lift it with. And you shall make the poles of acacia wood and overlay them with gold. And you shall put it before the veil that is before the ark of the witness, before the lid of atonement that is over the witness, where I am to meet with you. And Aaron shall burn on it a sweet incense morning by morning, as he tends the lamps, he shall burn incense on it. And when Aaron lights the lamps between the evenings, he shall burn incense on it, and a continual incense before Yahweh throughout your generations. Do not offer strange incense on it, or an ascending offering, or grain offering, or do not pour a drink offering on it. And Aaron shall make an atonement upon its horns once a year with the blood of the sin of the offering of atonement. Once a year he makes atonement upon it through your generations. It is most set apart to Yahweh.
And you know what? Let's just stop at verse 10.
Okay.
I say go to 21.
Okay.
Verse 10 is actually what we want to stop at. Because the first thing we want to talk about here really is the altar of incense, right? The altar of incense. So we see that this altar of incense is kind of set up kind of like the same way that the Ark of the Covenant is. Ark of the Covenant is probably more rectangular, where this is kind of a I guess vertically it would be a rectangle. It's kind of like a square. It's like it's kind of a tall. I guess a tall square is a rectangle, but instead of being laid down long, the long part's not laid down like the Ark of the Covenant is. The tall part is goes straight up with this, and so, but the idea of it being wood overlaid with gold. The idea of it having these poles that was used to carry it in that respect. It is, similar to the Ark of the Covenant. So I want to look at a couple things over here with this. If we look back at verse 1, I want to look at a couple of these words over here. Let me get our tools down here. We want to look at, it says, make you a slaughter place or an altar. It's translated as altar. Because when, this is actually the altar of incense, like you wasn't putting sacrifices, you actually weren't slaughtering things on it. That was for the brazen altar that was outside of the holy place. In the holy place, you had the table of showbread on one end. You had the menorah on the other end, on the other side, and then on the at the door, not the door entering into the holy place, but at the door going at the back of the oh, you know what? Let me do this. Hisky, grab my Hisky ain't even in here. I was going to make a little drawing, but in the back of the back of the holy place, you had Hisky. Grab that board real quick.
Grab that board so we can.
Let me do a little illustration.
Do some artwork.
I should have got I should have got a little nice picture, but instead you forced to. Instead, you're forced to have to look at my crude drawings. Okay, let me just whip this up here real quick. You had so one end had the menorah, boop, boop, boop. One end had the table of showbread. Wow, this ain't bad actually. What I'm doing here.
You got the spirit moving your hand.
Oh my goodness, boy! You better watch out. All right, the Ark of the Covenant got a little crazy, but okay. So this is what we're looking at over here. Inside of the ark, inside of the tabernacle, you had the menorah on one end. You had the table of showbread on the other end. I was saying the door that goes into the holy place would be over here, right? And then the door to the most holy place is over here. And then you had the altar of incense, what we're looking at, we're talking about today. The altar of incense was right here, right? And then so the brazen altar and the laver and that was all out here, right? And so inside here, you had this altar of incense. What we talking about here? This golden altar of incense, where that's what you burn on it was incense, right? And so, I don't believe it talks about it in this chapter, but what they did was they took the incense on a censer, like a little incense holder. They would get the fire from the brazen altar, the coals, bring those in, grab this and get the incense and burn it on this. And then they would take it in here when they went in there once a year, the high priest, and then they would cover this place with smoke off of the incense altar. So this is where the incense would burn in here, and they would bring not this whole thing, but just the incense off of this thing into here and kind of cover this whole situation with smoke. But this is how it was situated here. It was obviously much more beautiful than than what I just did right there. But I want to look at a couple things over here just so we can see. Let me pull up the scriptures again. If we look over here, it says make an altar to burn a miktar to fume on. Let's see here. A place to burn upon. Let's see, what is this we're looking at here? This is where's the word study? There it goes. Place for burning. It refers to a location or spot for burning. An altar. Place of sacrificial smoke. It's interesting that the thing that it's translated as burn, right? But it's kind of, we think of burn, you think of kind of the action, right? You think of the verb part, and the altar will be the place, right? The altar seems to be the noun in the sentence, and then what the on the altar will burn. But when we look at this over here, it's kind of calling it this place of smoke and incense, as if I guess it's calling it a masculine noun, meaning a place for burning. But it's just a bit confusing because in the English translation is translating it as this word, which, as far as we concern in our language, is like it's the action part of it. But understanding that this is the altar, that the burning again that's being done on it is for this incense, is for the this sweet smelling ketoret. I guess it's kind of similar to our sister in there, ketorah. This word means fumigation or incense or perfume, right? But it also, the root of this word, I want to look at this root over here. This here is, if we go down, let's see here. I'm looking for, oh, wait. Oh, this is what I'm looking for, 7,000. The prime root is this Qatar, and it's identical with this 7,000, which is to join. And it's interesting when we look at the significance of the incense and understanding what it's doing, because again, we have this thing where you have this smoke, right, that originates, at this particular location and then goes up, right? You have this smoke that's made from the incense and it goes up and becomes this sweet smelling aroma, but it's made for and to the Most High. And so when we think about kind of the significances of the incense, It has its practical purposes, right? It smells good. It's a wonderful aroma. I mean, if you could just think about what could be in a place where it might potentially cause it to have a is the light from the menorah, the windows have to this incense that burns, um, to kind of mask. Um, Also, when you look at the altar, it also acts as a wall or a curtain or something that obscures the vision when you go into this. When you go into the the most holy place, which again only went into the most holy place once a year, but when he did, the priest kind of has smoke. He's getting smoke all over the place, and so the a thing that because you have at least in the original setup, you had the presence of the Most High resting over the mercy seat, right? And so it was necessary for you to form some type of your vision had to be obscured, so you wasn't sitting there looking upon this uh this this holiness that was over here. And then even the altar itself, when they carried it, it was covered. It was on a cart, but they covered it up as not to look upon it, right? And so um from a practical standpoint, again, this smoke was kind of multi-purpose, where it's causing there to be this fragrant aroma, and again, it's also obscuring the vision. But when we think about it from a symbolic standpoint, you know, you commonly see in the scriptures where it speaks about incense and kind of connects that with prayer, right? Going up, the prayers going up, kind of like incense goes up, where it originates, in the earthly realm and kind of ascends up and dissipates up into the atmosphere, right? And so again, from like a symbolic standpoint, you can think about the incense as being this thing that kind of signifies prayer. And so if we looked at verses like let's see here, if we go to Revelation, because I don't want to just be saying stuff. It says over in chapter 5 and verse 8. 5 verse 8. Yeah, read that.
And when he took the scroll, the 4 living creatures and the 24 elders fell down before the Lamb, holding each holding a harp and golden bowls filled with incense, which are the prayers of the set apart ones.
Okay, very good. So you see over here we have these four living creatures, right, which were kind of these angelic beasts or whatever that was going around, the 24 elders that fell down before the Lamb, and they were all holding these golden bowls, these censers filled with incense. And it said that the incense, right, are the prayers of the set apart ones, right? Excuse me. So, very interesting. If we go also over to chapter 8 and read verses 3 and 4. What's that say there?
Another messenger came and stood at the slaughter place holding a gold censer, and much incense was given to him, that he should offer it with the prayers of all the set apart ones upon the golden slaughter place which was before the throne. And the smoke of the incense with the prayers of the set apart ones went up before Elohim from the hand of the messenger.
Okay, very good. So if we look at these two, thinking about these two places in Revelations where it's giving you this picture of what's going on in the heavenlies. We see in one place it talks about the bowls filled with incense, and it says that that is the actual prayers of the set apart ones. And then we look over in this over here, we see that the where it says that in verse 3 that he should offer it with. So they have much incense was given to him that he should offer it with the prayers of the set apart one. So we see where it's kind of a thing where we see the incense being actually referred to the incense over in one place, and then we see another place where the incense, both the incense and the prayers, are kind of put side by side. There's a kind of a verse that's over in it's interesting over in, let's see, we got to get these other scriptures in order to find it. If we look in Tobit, this is something interesting. It kind of goes along with what's going on over in Revelation. If we look at verse, let's see here, 15. What's that say? 15.
I am Raphael, one of the seven holy angels, which present the prayers of the saints, and which go in and out before the glory of the Holy One.
Okay, so you have this idea where you have these kind of angelic beings who are acting as messengers. They're actually carrying, right, the prayers of the saints from their originating points, and kind of participating in the transfer over to the Most High. Which, if you think about the picture that's being given really in Revelations, where you have this again, this these beings that are basically taking the prayers to where the Most High is. This is kind of the same situation that you see over there in Tobit. And so, again, we think about the incense, the altar of incense. Again, it gives you this idea of the prayers, the intercession to the Most High, this thing that was burned in the most holy place, as the ministering of the high priest was going forth. And when we look at, let's see. If we go over here and we look at let's see here. Proverbs 15 is an interesting chapter, but if we look at Proverbs, let's look at it over here in this version here. We want to look at verse 8, and then we'll drop down to 29.
The slaughtering of the wrong ones is an abomination to Yahweh, but the prayer of the straight is his delight.
Okay, so we think about that from a King James, where it says the sacrifice of the wicked, right, is abomination to Yahweh, right? The Most High don't want the incense offering of the wicked ones, right? He don't want the sacrifice that comes from those that are wicked, right? But the prayer of the upright is even interesting. That in this verse where it's giving you that word sacrifice. What is this? Oh, it's set back. It literally is kind of a sacrifice or slaughtering. But even still, it's interesting that it's kind of putting these things together where the sacrifice of the wicked one's abomination, but then the prayer of the upright one is his delight, right? Where it's kind of giving you this thing where it's kind of putting the sacrifice and the prayer they're kind of making them be something that's similar to each other, right? The thing that's different really is who it is that's offering it, right? The wicked one, his sacrifice, his slaughtering, his prayer even is an abomination to the Most High. He don't want that. He's not interested in your prayers as a wicked one, right? Turn from your wickedness, and then now you can talk about something over there, right? But the slaughtering of the wicked one, he's calling that an abomination. Like there's like you could count probably on one hand the thing that the Most High considers an abomination, right? And the offering of a wicked one is on that list, right? Interesting enough. But verse 29, what's that say?
So Yahweh is far from the wrong ones. He hears the prayer of the righteous.
Okay, that's basically giving us the same idea, right? He's far from them. And then it's interesting when you have this idea of there being messengers that are bringing the prayers, right? Maybe the journey's it's too long. They can't, it's too far. The wicked ones, the journey's is not, they're too far. They can't make the journey, right? But the ones of the righteous, right? He hears those, right? He hears, right? And so when we think about again the prayers, again being connected with the altar of incense, right? And the connection between the two, we're able to see that connection. When we think about the fact that the construction of the altar of incense, like I said, is like unto the Ark of the Covenant, as to where it was this wood that's overlaid with this gold, and so we could think about how, in a way, that can typify for us Yeshua, as a man, where he was a man, he was this corruptible, individual, this being that was, that had a beginning and an end, but again, like the altar covered in gold, so purified, right? And so when we think about the altar of incense, it can give us a picture of Yeshua. So I wanted to look at an example where we see Yeshua. There's many examples we see in the scripture of Yeshua and prayer, but I wanted to look at one in particular. If we look in the book of John, let's see. Do we want to look at this whole thing? We can just go through the whole thing. It don't matter. We got.
Can I interject something, brother?
Good.
All right, y'all. When I read this, especially about the Most High not accepting the sacrifices are wrong, so to speak. Go think about what Mashiach said. They praise me with their lips, but their hearts are so far from me. See, when I grew up, I was taught that once saved, always saved. And then if you fell away, then you weren't a Christian in the first place. I know y'all probably heard that before, but we forget, though, that it does say in the scripture that in the end time that some will have itching ears, that will abandon the truth and will seek themselves teachers to hear the lies and the fables. So therefore they come out. See, no one can pluck you out of God's hand, but never said you can't jump out of it. Because we have a choice. So when the wrong try to worship the Hamashiach, it's not accepted. Just like the sacrifices you were saying, we see him in the Old Testament the same way. There's so many things in scripture that could be said about what you're teaching right now that backs everything up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very good. Okay, so if we look over here in the book of John, we actually see an example. Yochanan, we see an example of Yeshua in prayer. So let me see here. Let's go ahead. Let's just go ahead and read through this real quick because I want to talk about a couple of things. Just start reading that verse 1 there.
Okay. He should have said these words and lifted up his eyes to the heaven and said, Father, the hour has come. Esteem your son, so that your son also might esteem you, as you have given him authority over all flesh, that he should give everlasting life to all whom you have given him. And this everlasting life, that they should know you, the only true Elohim, and Yeshua Messiah, whom you have set. I have esteemed you on the earth, having accomplished the work you have given me that I should do. And now esteem me with yourself, Father, with the esteem which I had with you before the world was. I have revealed your name to the men whom you gave me out of the world. They were yours, and you gave them to me, and they have guarded your word. Now they have come to know that all you have gave to me is from you, because the words which you gave to me I have given to them, and they have received them, and have truly known that I came forth from you, and they believed that you sent me. I pray for them. I do not pray for the world, but those whom you have given me, and for they are yours. All mine are yours, and yours are mine, and I have been esteemed in them. And I am no more in the world, but these are in the world, and I come to you. Set apart, Father, guard them with your name, which you have given me, so that they might be one as we are. When I was with them in the world, I was guarding them in your name, which you have given me, and watched over them. And not one of them perished except the son of destruction, that the scripture might be fulfilled. And now I come to you, and I speak these words in the world, so that they have my joy completed in them. I have given them your word, and the world hated them because they are not of the world, as I am not of the world. I do not pray for I do not pray that you should take them out of the world, but that you keep them from the wicked one. They are not of the world, as I am not of the world. Set them apart in your truth. Your word is truth. As I sent, as you sent me into the world, I also sent them into the world, and for them I set myself apart, so that they too might be set apart in truth. I do not pray for these alone, but also for those believing in me through their word, so that they all might be one as you,
Mm.
Father, are in me, and I in you, so that they too might be one in us, so that the world might believe that you have sent me, and the esteem which you have given me, have given them, so that they might be one, which is one, I in them, and you in me, so that they might be perfected into one, so that the world knows that you have sent me and have loved them as you love me. Father, I desire that those who you have given me might be with me where I am, so that they see my esteem which you have given me, because you loved me before the foundation of the world. O righteous Father, indeed, the world did not know you, but I knew you, and these knew you that you sent me. And I have made your name known to them, and they shall make it known, so that the love that which you might love me might be in them, and I in them.
Okay, very good.
Mm.
So when we look at this prayer that Yeshua is giving over here in Yochanan chapter 17, we look at this thing, it could kind of be broken up into a couple parts, right? It begins when we look at the first 5 verses where he prays basically for his own self, right? He's basically prays for himself and things that have to do with him to the Father in the first 5 verses over there. And then
Mm-hmm.
when we go basically from 6, if you look from 6 down through 17, basically now he prays for his disciples,
Right.
right? So he prays for himself, he prays for his disciples, the ones that thou has given me, right? His disciples. Um when we look and see 18, he says, and thou hast sent me into the world, even so I have also sent them into the world, right? So he talks about the fact that he has a mission, a job for these ones, his disciples, and then so he kind of deals with that, and then but then he also deals with the fruit of that, the ones who will believe in the message that the disciples would have, right?
Mm-hmm.
For so he's dealing with himself, his disciples, and then those who will believe in the message of the disciples, right? And then lastly, 24 through 26, he's back to the disciples again, and basically the disciples along with anybody else who kind of joins themselves to this thing over here. Um, but looking at this, I mean, there's so much that could be said about this chapter. The point that we want to just deal with over here is the fact that we have this example of, despite the fact of who Yeshua was in terms of who he essentially was, where he kind of vocalizes it in the beginning in terms of the idea of glorifying him back to the place that he was before the world was.
That's
Right. And so when we think about Yeshua in that regard, it's interesting that we even see him in this way where he's offering this prayer to the Most High. He's vocalizing this thing to the Father, in spite of the fact of who he is. Understanding that Yeshua and the Father are one. He says it in this thing that he's saying, right?
Mhm.
But yet and still, it's still necessary for him to go ahead and vocalize this prayer to the Most High. And really, that's kind of what, again, as much as could be said about, these 26 verses. But the main thing that I want to deal with over here is the fact that Yeshua here and other places took the time to actually vocalize things to the Father as prayer. Where, he's Yeshua. Why can't he just think of a thing and then that thought just be there?
Right.
Mhm.
Right.
Pay homage.
But he went through this thing, this example, this motion of prayer. Like he did a thing.
Mhm.
He didn't just kind of like in his mind just think on the Most High and kind of just project his thoughts. Just let your thoughts be with the Most High, right? There was a thing that he did, right? And there was literal words put together and thoughts and ideas put together that he literally said to the Father. And so I think that's interesting when we think about, again, this idea of the altar of incense, where it's this thing that's kind of signifying this thing that burns up and turns into smoke and rises up to the heavens, and thinking about it in the terms of the prayers where it's going up out of you, and then the angels are even taking hold of this thing and carrying this thing and delivering it over to the Most High. But it's like it's this thing that's happening, right? There's something that's going on. And like I said, this is one example. There's many examples of Yeshua praying, but again, it's like it's an actual event that's taking place, where again he's literally vocalizing these things and putting these things into action. Again, Yeshua as a man, giving us this example. This is not the first time we see Yeshua doing a thing where it would seem that the only reason why he's doing it is for our purposes, right? Because the first thing that Yeshua does when he comes on the scene, he don't teach nobody before he goes and is immersed in water.
Right. So he's
right. Well, we have immersion, and it's said to be this thing that typifies our repentance and our cleansing. But Yeshua, the perfect one, the master teacher, what is he repenting from? Right? He's not repenting from anything, but he tells John it's necessary for me to fulfill all righteousness.
Right.
So when we look at the fact that we see these various interactions between Yeshua as a man and the Father, him giving these putting forth these prayers, it for me it seems as if it's in the same category over here, where he's doing these things that exemplify how we should be in ourselves, not necessarily that he because of the fact of who he actually was, he's doing this thing as an example for us to do, showing us, what we're supposed to do. Just like when we think about the Father resting on the seventh day for creation, right? Like he was tired, right?
And Joey told him, hey, lay down. Look at all that daggone. I'm tired. Y'all lay down.
So we look at this. Oftentimes we're able to see where the Most High is showing us these things through, whether it be through His own example or through the example of Yeshua for us, right?
Can I add something?
But,
When I came into this truth, like a little before that, when I was reading John, matter of fact, 4 and 5 it sent chills down my spine, because that's when I discovered those, like for the first time, when it hit me, he said, as we were before the world was.
mm-hmm.
So going back to what you're saying about the reverence of the smoke and the prayer and the incense, it's like he was there before the world was. So everything that's spoken about in the Old Testament leads us up to our Redeemer. It leads us up to our reconciliations through our Redeemer, sacrifice, prayer and repentance. And there's no more need to slaughter into the lamb because he became the ultimate one. So, and we know that the laws were instituted as a schoolmaster that would lead us up to Hamashiach. That way we will be made atonement for our sins. Therefore, we're not under the penalty, the death sentence of the law. That's why it's no longer burdensome. So you could see him, like you said, you can see Yeshua all through the Old Testament, man. Just because it don't say his name doesn't mean he wasn't near it. Crying out loud, he's telling you right here, glorify me, Father, with the glory that I had with you before the world was. It's just common sense. And that go in sync with John 1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with y'all, and the Word was y'all. Jump down to 14, and the Word became flesh and dwelt amongst us. So that all goes together. But I don't want to waste too much of your time.
Yeah, so again, we want to think about the fact that Yeshua is exemplified in the altar of incense in terms of being the altar of incense being this thing that was made out of wood and then purified with gold, right? And then also we can also see where the altar of incense can also be something that also typifies man, because when we think about man literally is this earthly corruptible thing being transformed into something that is long lasting, right? And we think about the fact that, again, we read the scriptures where the Most High only wants the prayers from the righteous, right? He only wants the prayers from the ones who have been translated from being this earthly corruptible thing into the spiritual everlasting thing anyway, right? And so just like we're able to look at the altar of incense as being a picture of Messiah, we can also look at the altar of incense being the picture of man. And so one thing I wanted to actually think about was when we look over at chapter 30, verse 7 and 8, we see that so Aaron, when he goes in there and deals with the lamps, when he goes into the most holy place and deals with the lamps, he had to sit up there and do something with the wicks to make sure that everything was in place, because the candles had to keep on. I'm talking about on the menorah, they had to always be burning. And so in order for him to be sure that everything was always burning, he had to go in there and deal with the wicks and make sure if he had to extend them or whatever, he had to do whatever he had to do over there. But when he did that, when he went in there and did that, every morning, says morning by morning, and between the evenings, right? Every morning, every evening. Every morning he did it, every evening he did it. When he messed with the lamps, he dealt with the altar of incense at the same time. Right? When he went in there to make sure that the menorah was burning properly, he also burned the morning, in the morning and in the evening, he burned the altar of incense. Right. And so I wanted to kind of look at this because when we think about this situation where he's doing this thing in the morning in the Boker, right? Over here, Boker being the dawn, right? The break of day, right? Or the morning. And so again, when we think about Boker, or this dawn time or this breaking of daytime, it's interesting. We look at a day where a day really does have a calendar day has 4 parts, right? You have this Boker, which is talking about this morning, which when we look at it is kind of a mixture, right? The word Boker don't mean mixture, but when we look at what it is, that's what it is. It's the transition from the dark period into the light period. If we looked at evening, which is even, or Areb, which is dusk, right? The other one was dawn. This is dusk. Let's see here. We look at, this is the root of this is Arab, which is to grow dusky, getting darkened. We want to look at here. Let's see here. Arab here. Look, braid, intermix, this traffic thing, mingle, right? So when we look at the word that's translated as even, this word actually means this mixture, right? But it's interesting, if we looked at Erev and Boker, if we was to go and get a snapshot of outside of time, and we was to take a snapshot of Boker and a snapshot of Erev, it would be indistinguishable. If you was outside of time, not understanding which way the sun was going, whether it was going up or down, if I just looked at a picture, I wouldn't be able to know whether it's sundown or sun up, right? But that transition time, they look exactly the same, whether the sun's coming or going. Boker, Erev. Both of these times, this Boker being the transition point into the light, and Erev being the transition point into the darkness, we see that these are, it's interesting that these are kind of the entry points into the known. Because if I was to take a snapshot of day, right, you know what that is. It's daytime. It's day. It's not nothing to even think about. If I take a snapshot of night, it's a known period. It's night. It's not, unless I live like in Alaska, forbidden place. You're not supposed to live in Alaska. You don't have days and nights. It's just, you're not supposed to live there. Yeah, it's just not, it's not according to Torah to live in Alaska.
Yeah.
I'm just saying. But under normal circumstances, right, you know if it's day or if it's night. And so it's interesting that we have this time that the incense had to be burned, right, at Boker or at Erev. When you're going into these known times, it is as an entrance way into these times, you was to offer this incense offering on the altar of incense. As you're going from one stage to the next. And so I thought that was interesting looking at that, because when we look, even from a historical standpoint, when we look and understand that they actually had these, the prayer times really were based off of this the morning and the evening offering. These times, again, at Boker, at Erev, the times we're going into daylight, going into nighttime, where you made this offering unto the Most High, right? This thing that we can say is basically a prayer offering, right? This incense offering. And so again, when we look at when this was, even though we look at this where it's giving you in verse 7 and 8, you do it at evening, you do it at morning. It's giving you these portions of an entire calendar day, right? That you are supposed to, really dedicate unto the Most High. Most people, don't see Boker, right?
Mm-hmm.
Most people don't see Boker, right? They know about night, they know about day, they even know about even. They even know about the going down of the sun. But most people don't really know about the coming up of the sun. You most of the time, you either up to I'm saying, if you got an overnight job like some people do, if you ain't out already working, already up, you break it down that's REM time for most people.
Mm-hmm.
You this rapid eye movement for the majority of the people,
Right?
right?
Exactly.
You having the best dreams you ever had in your whole life at that time.
Unless you all night up editing like some people.
Oh, shoot. Me too.
Yeah. But when we look at this and again thinking about the Most High putting these things together, this everyday pattern that he put together over here, we see that that time is indeed a time that was dedicated to offer up those incense offerings to the Most High. Right? And so part of this thing about this this daily offering that was offered 2 times a day, right, at Erev and at Boker continually, we see that picture of being set for us, of these times where the Most High has literally set these appointments for us, and we, because of the times and circumstances that we find ourselves in, we have to kind of reconnect ourselves back with the way that the Most High has instituted for us to actually be doing things, right? We don't think about these things a lot of the times, but when we look over here, where again the Most High setting up his these really are the Most High's ways for worship, right? He's setting up the ways for worship. If we go back to the last chapter we was just looking at, in verse let's see, 38. Just read 38 there real quick.
And this is what you prepare on the slaughtering place: 2 lambs and a year old daily continually.
Oh yeah, and 29 too.
Prepare the lamb in the morning, and the lamb you prepare between the evenings.
Okay, so remember when the priest got his whole situation together from last chapter, whenever he started his duties, this was his duties over here, right? He had his his morning offering, and he had his evening offering. And now we learning over here that not only did he have his morning offering that he did and his evening offering that he did, but also when he went in there in the morning and checked on the menorah and see that it was still burning, he also went over there and lit his altar of incense in the morning and in the evening. Right, so we see over here kind of this pattern that has developed, this thing that's going on at 2 parts of the day, right? At Boker, at Erev, at the mixture of coming into lightness and a mixture of coming into darkness, where the the priest is doing his work. And again, part of his work, what we're talking about today, is this offering of incense, which we are thinking about in the context of prayer. Okay, so if we think about this now, let's go over to the book of Acts. Let's see, book of Acts, chapter 2. Okay, what's that say? Verse 46 right there.
And day by day, continuing with one mind in a set apart place and breaking bread from house to house, they ate their food with gladness and simplicity of heart.
Okay, very good. So when we look over here, we don't automatically know actually what's going on over here with these verses over here until we do some investigating, because they're saying these things, continuing daily with one accord in the temple, breaking bread from house to house. Did they eat their meat with gladness and singleness of heart? This is really the life of the the first century believers, right? Those that were following after the ways of Yeshua at this time. This is kind of giving you like a day continuing daily in one accord in the temple, breaking bread from house to house. They eat their meat with gladness and singleness of heart, all of them together, right? This is way more than just them. Okay, if we look at this in the King James, they continuing daily in one accord in the temple, right? This is not really just about them hanging out together at the temple. That's not really what they're saying over in this verse. Not that they just hung out with each other at the temple, right? One of the things that we're able to see really from like a historical perspective is, whether it be the temple, which of course was over there in Jerusalem, or whether it be various synagogues that was around, like outside of the temple area, right? Because everybody didn't live over there in the temple, or whether it be satellite home assemblies, right? This is where the people came together, right? Whether it was, if you was in the outskirts, you get together at the local kind of synagogue. But if you was Jerusalem, right, you would be at the temple, right? But at each one of those places was where you would do the things, right? And when we think about the things that they would do in terms of, again, we're talking about the altar of incense. Again, there was a time where they came together for prayer, right? Whether it was at these house assemblies, whether it was at these places of worship, or whether it was um, the actual temple. But it's telling you that over there in this verse 46, that's what it's telling you. They was all doing this stuff, getting together. They were continuing daily with one accord in the temple, breaking bread from house to house, eating their meat in gladness and singleness of heart. So, again, thinking about that, they're helping us to be able to see into what they was doing. Again, something that we don't think about is these actual times that are actually these set apart, kind of designated points in time for the altar of incense to be burned, this thing that is signifying this time of prayer. And so again, if we think about Yeshua and his thoughts on prayer, we saw an example of him praying, right? But he also has some thoughts that he had about prayer, right? So if we go over here and look in Matthew in chapter 6, let's read 6. Let's start reading at 6 and verse 5 down through 15.
It says, and when you pray, you shall not be like the hypocrites, for when they pray, standing in the congregations on the corners of the streets, to be seen by men. Truly I say to you that they have their reward. But you, when you pray, go to your room, having shut your door, pray to your Father who is in the secret place, and your Father who sees in secret shall reward you openly. When praying, do not keep on babbling like the nations, for they think that they shall be heard with their many words. Therefore, do not be like them, for your Father knows what you need before you ask Him. This then is the way you should pray. Our Father who is in heaven, let your name be set apart. Let your reign come, and let your desire be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us today our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And do not lead us into trial, but deliver us from the wicked one. Because yours is the reign and the power and the esteem forever. Amen. For if you forgive men their trespasses, your heavenly Father shall also forgive you. But if you do not forgive men their trespasses, neither shall your Father forgive your trespasses.
Okay, very good. All right, we probably could have stopped that on 13. I did say 15 though. My bad. Okay, so if we look over here now, so when we look at this thing, this is now Yeshua has some commentary over here on prayer, right? And so he starts off, and when you look at this, it seems to me that he's dealing with two kinds of folks over here that he's saying that you don't be like. He says in verse 5, he says, don't be like the hypocrites. Right? Don't be like the hypocrites, first of all. But then he also says in verse 7, don't be like the nations. So it's two kinds of people that he's talking about over here, and they're not necessarily the same people. The hypocrites and the nations. He's talking about the hypocrites, he's most likely talking about the Pharisees. He loved to call the Pharisees hypocrites. He loved to do that, right?
Hypocrites.
And then so he talks about the hypocrites and it says what they do and what you shouldn't do. And then he does that in 5 and 6, right? And then 7, he says, don't be like these nations that do which says do not keep on babbling. Look in the King James, it says use not vain repetitions. And so when we think about this idea, of prayer, praying, when we see over here with Yeshua, he's given us kind of the template. He's given us the kind of an overview of what our situation should be. And so I want to talk about, first of all, these hypocrites. First of all, because he says, don't be like them, right? They love for people to see what they're doing, right? Right? Praying, standing in the congregations or on the corners in the streets to be seen by men. But I think that we have to look at what is the intention over here and deal with what the intention is and what he's saying for you not to be doing. And because are we supposed to look at this and say that are you not supposed to pray standing in the congregations? Is that what he's saying? Or are you not supposed to pray on the corner of a street? The point seems to be here that it talks about, he says those two things to be seen by men. Right. And then even he ends it off. I say to you, they have their reward. And the reward is what? Somebody looking at them like, wow, they really know how to say some things.
Spiritual giants.
Right. And so I think when we look at these things, it's easy for us to kind of lump all of what he said and put it together and think that he means for us not to do any of those things. But it seems as if, to me anyway, that he's saying that when you pray, don't do it like the hypocrites. Mm-hmm. And the point of it don't got nothing to do with somebody looking at you. Mm-hmm. Because he could have said anything really that would cause people to want to look at you and make you look a certain kind of way. Let's look over real quick over here at Mark 7 and 6. Mark 7 and 6.
And he answering said to them, well, did Yeshua, Yeshayahu prophesy concerning you hypocrites, as it has been written, this people respect me with their lips, but with their hearts is far from me.
Hello.
Okay, read 7 and 8 too.
And in vain do they worship me, teaching the commandments of men, forsaking the command of Elohim. You hold fast the tradition of men. Okay, very good. So over here we see the same thing over here, right? He's talking about these hypocrites. Who he tell you what a hypocrite is these people that sit up here and respect me with their lips, but their hearts ain't there. That's what a hypocrite is, right? Right? And in vain worship, teaching as teachings of the commandments of men and forsaking the commandments of the Most High. And so when we look at this, is this telling us that commandments of men is something that is wrong? Traditions? When we look at this verse 7 and 8? Yeah.
It's wrong.
If it's forsaken.
Oh, okay. Now you put a caveat on it. You said if it's forsaking.
They forsake the command.
I'm saying in general. I'm asking, is traditions of men in general something that's wrong?
But if you're doing the right thing, no.
Okay, you did it again. You put a caveat. There's there's an if
Yeah.
there,
Yeah.
right? If you doing these traditions of men, and he did the same thing, forsaking the commandments of Elohim, you hold fast. You hold fast to the traditions of men, but you forsake the commandments of Elohim.
Right.
That's the difference. You can't even say it without saying the if part. It's just coming out.
Because man's wicked. So any tradition of man, but if we're doing righteously, you teach your kids to do righteously, that becomes a tradition among us.
To do righteously, right?
But the thing is that I'm saying you could have a tradition
Mhm.
that's kind of based on scripture, but it's not scripture,
Mhm.
Okay.
right?
Like Hanukkah. I mean,
Right.
based
It's
on
like it's
scripture,
connected
it's
to
not
like a
Torah.
historical thing that
Right.
happened to Israel, but
Right.
Yahweh didn't never say,
Do it.
"Thou shalt keep Hanukkah."
Yeah, or he never said thou
So
shalt not.
that's
right.
a perfect example of a tradition of men.
Right.
So you're keeping a tradition. Now, if I'm set up here and I do my best, everything I could do to keep Hanukkah or Purim,
outside.
and then I ain't thinking about
Yeah,
like
Yeah, that's
Pesach
different.
and
Yeah,
all this other stuff.
Yeah.
I'm doing this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if we look over here, right? If we look over here, first of all, Yeshua said it. Yeshua said over here, first of all, a hypocrite is you the one who got all of this. You got all the respect in the world for me out of your lips, but your heart ain't there.
Yeah.
And then he said what they did. They sit up here and do all these things, but the commandments of the Most High they don't do. Then he goes in further on that note. But the idea is that we can't say now, we can't connect something with tradition and say because it's tradition is something that's wrong, because that's not what Yeshua is doing. He's saying these people are treating these traditions that greater than and forsaking the commandments, and so that's what he's saying. Because again, the same time he sit up here and talks about these Pharisees, he don't name them here, but we know who he's talking about.
Right.
This at this point over here, he calling them hypocrites and all this other things. But in the other verses, we see where he says they sit in the seat of Moses.
Right. Right.
The things that they say, you do that.
Mhm.
Do what they say and not what they do.
They do.
It's
Yeah.
like now you have a lot of Ashkenazim who hold the oral traditions
Oral.
higher than Torah.
Torah. Right.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, right. That and that's the point. But I'm saying that we shouldn't look at the traditions and say, well, the traditions don't mean anything because it's not in the scriptures, and then go over here to what Yeshua said and say, look, he says right over here.
Yeah.
But that's not what he's saying over here. He's saying over here, don't sit up there and rise those things up above the scriptures and then don't even do the scriptures, but you trying to sit up here and do these things over here.
Like, I will iterate, like when because I be discussing things with a few pastors during our week. And we had touched on this topic, and like I was talking about as far as the traditions of man, you're forsaking the Torah of the Most High. For instance, y'all praise him with your lips during church service, and then turn around and host all these Christmas parties and Easter plays and all these holidays or holidays that's not even mentioned in the Bible to do.
Mm-hmm.
So they're taking on the traditions of man in that retrospect and denying the Torah of Yah. So they fall into that category for real. They actually do.
Well, those things that you're talking about absolutely fall in that category. But again, we're looking at those things, those traditions that they're doing are things that would be actually intrinsically wicked.
Wicked,
right? But traditions in and of themselves is a whole other thing. What do 1 Corinthians 11:2 say?
It says, and I praise you, brothers, that you remember me in every way and keep the traditions as I delivered them to you.
Okay, so Paul got some traditions that he set up here and delivered to the people that he want them to keep and do.
Right.
And then he even goes on to talk about it over here with this whole idea of this woman and having their heads covered thing. Right? Because we don't see a commandment that goes along with this over here. This is based on a particular kind of, it's kind of philosophical in a way, representative of the order that we see. This is definitely the order that we understand with between man and woman. And so this tradition that he has over here that he delivers, right, is this thing that is something that they did from a cultural standpoint, because we could see places and understand in the culture how the people lived and dressed. But this is a perfect example over here of something that they have, and even Paul sitting up here talking about this idea of keeping these traditions, right? That he's expected for them to sit up there and do. These places that he established over here, right? The same thing that we see in Second Thessalonians, Paul again. Let's see, what's this? 2:15. What's that say right there?
So then, brothers, stand fast and hold the traditions which you were taught, whether by word or by our letter.
Okay, so over there is the same thing over there, right? Where, he's talking to another group of people, right, about these traditions over here. So we can't sit up here and talk about or against tradition necessarily, and then take it back to Yeshua and say, look, Yeshua said don't do that. That's not what he said.
But he also told us don't do as the heathens do. So we know.
Well, we didn't get to the heathen part yet,
but we know that they do the traditions of man in the carnal way.
Yeah. But again, just like Yeshua did, he separates that out.
That's right.
Over there. So he over here we look and see where the first thing that he talked about, and then connecting that with the traditions, was with the hypocrites. We talk about the nations after. Right?
There's a good tradition that a lot of the women keep today. Like for instance, I asked my mom, why do you put everything in the pot when you make stew, Mom? Oh, I don't know. My mother did it. Ask Grandma. I don't know. My mother did it. We go all the way back to the source. Hey, great grandma, why do you put everything in that pot? Like, are you kidding me? I ain't got enough money for all those pots. You get me? So that is a wise tradition to keep.
And speaking of that too, so you talking about food, it just made me think about something that happened.
Yeah.
As far as traditions, that I kind of was getting upset about this when we look, because me being that I used to be a chef, not world renowned or anything, but just
Yeah.
So for entertainment, I enjoy watching cooking things, right?
Yeah.
And so they was going around America looking at all of these different traditions of people that immigrated into this place,
right,
that we call America. And when you look at all of these different ethnic groups and got all of these different things that they have incorporated in their foods, when you look at the so-called African Americans food traditions, it's terrible.
Very terrible.
Mm-hmm.
It's terrible. Our food traditions is killing us.
It's born out of slavery.
Yeah, it is.
I know what it's born out of, but I'm saying as far as when you look at something like this, when you look at all of these so-called, I guess the difference between immigrant and us.
Still cooking with lard.
Yeah.
But it's like the food traditions that go with the people that look like us,
soul food, right?
quote unquote. It's terrible.
Yeah.
Like it's a terrible thing, and it's sad. Like we got all this garbage that we sit up here. It's sad, and it's sad because of what it is. It's amazing because of what you people who came up in that type of a life when you had like some all of that stuff. Like people could sit up here and say what they want to say about pork and all the rest of that, but you know, people, you can't sit up here and talk about all of it as being something that tastes nasty because of understanding what it is and where maybe chitlins is. It could be an example, you know, something that's not in that category.
Yeah, they glamorize it.
But all that other stuff, you can't sit up here and talk about it in terms of it being something that's like disgusting, like my kids like to talk
good
about.
stuff, man.
Yeah.
Because as far as taste,
Mm.
you know what I'm saying? People,
Good.
that's like a hard thing for people, like the
But
food
me.
thing,
Mm-hmm.
right? But I'm saying all that just to say that we have these traditions that we do, and I guess it could even fit into the situations because you know that actually could be like it's a stumbling block. What you mean? I gotta sit up here? I can't have bacon. How am I
Yeah,
supposed to
crab
eat?
legs?
How am I supposed to eat greens?
Yeah, right.
Hey, I was mad when I couldn't eat.
I'm not
crab
putting
legs
no
and
turkey, nothing in my thing. I need some ham hocks in this thing.
some walking.
And you sit up here, if it's New Year's, I got to have my hog's head over and black eyed peas and all of that.
Easter, the Easter ham.
and all of that.
Remember the prophet who had to bake his cakes with cow's dung?
Ooh.
He said, "So shall my people eat
Yeah.
in their captivity."
Yeah.
Refuse to eat that.
Yeah, we're eating.
They ain't eating that
Mess.
pork.
Yeah.
Mess.
Saying all that just to say, we get into all of these traditions, and traditions in and of themselves, the idea of traditions is not the thing that makes it a bad thing. It's like what the actual is. We look at this slave food, which is what it is. That's the only way you can look at it.
Yeah.
It ain't soul food, it's slave
But
food.
see, they call it soul food because it's subscribed to us, and the food is actually killing us, killing not only our flesh but our soul. That's
Really,
why they say you are what
it
you
really
eat.
is killing your soul.
Yeah, we are what we eat. Y'all gave us the slop, and we so sloppy.
That was crazy. All right. So let's get back on track. I fell off track because you got this talking about food. But if we look over here at John 7, read John 7:37 over there.
So it was on the last day, the great day of the festival. Yeshua stood and cried out, saying, "If anyone thirsts, let him come to me, and let him who believes in me drink."
Just read 38 too. Yes, read
As the
38.
scripture said, out of his innermost shall flow rivers of living water.
Okay, very good. So when we look at this, right? He says over here on the last day of the great day of the festival. They don't say what the festival is, right? And so when we look at that, a lot of times we think about that as being the last day of the last great day of tabernacle,
Great thing, right?
right?
Yeah.
And so let's deal with that second. If we looked at this and don't know what that festival is, they're doing a tradition because we don't know what that is,
Right.
right? And Yeshua's over there keeping this tradition and expounding on some spiritual significance of it.
Right.
This tradition, this unnamed tradition. Now, if it is the last great day of Sukkot, that 8th day, he's still keeping the tradition because the thing that they're doing is this water pouring out celebration over here.
Right.
What they did at this time is they went down to one of these due to these wells and gathered up water and poured out water. It was like a water libation almost.
Yeah.
A ceremony that they was doing that Yeshua was taking part in, and again expounding on this thing that they was doing as a tradition. Because if we say that this is the 8th day of the feast, you don't talk about this thing over here in the Torah.
Mhm.
this thing that they're doing. So even if we know what the festival is,
Right.
the thing that they're doing over here is tradition.
Right. So that's the only feast day that has a great day in it, right?
Well, I'm saying it probably is that.
Yeah, most likely. Okay, I feel it.
But I'm saying either way, if it's not that, it's a tradition.
It's still tradition, right?
And if it is that, what
It's
they're
still
doing is a tradition.
Yeah, it's still tradition. That's the main.
And so either way, we see Yeshua over here keeping the tradition.
Right.
So he's not sitting up here saying for us not to do traditional things.
Right.
He's saying for us not to sit up here and do these things that got to do with wickedness, or it could be like a good thing, but you're doing that and not paying attention to what is actually says in the word. Now, the other thing now with the heathens and this whole idea of babbling or vain repetitions. And so that's another thing where they sit up there and say, people will say, well, if I'm going to sit up here and keep on saying the same thing over and over again, then Yeshua said over here, don't the heathens do that. Don't be like the heathens and do the vain repetition thing. But you can't look at what he's saying over there and not have the vain part be included in the repetitions.
Right.
Because it's not just about you saying one particular thing over and over again. It's you got to have the vain part in it. Because if you think about it, what you would do is to say, well, if there was a set collection of prayers that they said, Yeshua here essentially is saying is don't repeat those things, but repeat this, the Our Father prayer. Right?
Right.
He's not saying that. He's not saying don't say those things, say this instead. We can't not think about the vain part in the repetition thing. He's not saying don't sit up here and repeat that, instead repeat this thing that I'm telling you. It's not about repeating things, because look at this. I thought this was interesting. Look at this, what happens over here in Matthew 26. Matthew 26. Start reading at verse 38.
Then he said to them, my being is exceedingly grieved, even to death. Stay here and watch with me. And going forward a little, he fell on his face and prayed, saying, oh, my Father, is it possible let this cup pass from me? Yet not as I desire, but as you desire. And he came to the top ones and found them asleep, and said to Kepha, so were you not able to watch with me 1 hour? Watch and pray, lest you enter into trial. The spirit indeed is eager, but the flesh is weak. Again he went away the second time and prayed, saying, Oh my Father, if it is possible for this to pass, unless I drink it, let your desire be done.
That's what he just had prayed before, but go ahead.
And he came and found them asleep again, for their eyes were heavy. And he left and went again and prayed a third time, saying the same words.
Okay, so over here, we see Yeshua over here. Basically, what he said the first time, he said the second time, and then the third time, he definitely said the same thing that he said the second time. So, but we understand what's going on over here. What he talking about is definitely him repeating the same words.
It ain't vain.
It ain't nothing vain about what's going on over here. Nothing. No ting. Right? That's not what the idea is over here. It don't have nothing to do with this repeating thing. It's interesting that when you look at that thing, that idea, the idea of babbling and this whole thing of just repeating these, you see these people get into these things where they sit up here and they do this thing that they sit up there and say is supposed to be like they say it's supposed to be like speaking in tongues over here, and some of this stuff just sound like it sounds just like it sounds pretty crazy to me.
Yeah, like
Some of these people out here, they just be out here doing some more. I don't know what that is.
They
And
got this one where
What?
this dude is like making fun of somebody speaking in tongues. Saying, "I lick at my toes, I lick at my toes."
might as well.
Oh man,
it's crazy. It's crazy. Some of that stuff is literally it just sounds like some literal babbling, right? And it don't have nothing behind it, right? It's one thing when you look in the scriptures, when you see the examples over there of either you're saying something and the people looking don't know what you're saying, but somebody know what you're saying, right?
Right.
But if you saying something and then you the only one who know what you done said, that's not what the scripture don't give you that example.
Well, most of them don't even know what they saying.
Well, that's what I mean. So that's what I'm saying. So when we look over here, and so we getting some insight into this, he's connecting this whole idea of this whole babbling thing in vain repetition. He connects it to the heathens. That's what he said. Don't sit up there and be like them. And doing this vain repetition, the word literally does mean that.
And they be trying to sound so spectacular in the tone things.
Yeah,
I be listening to them. They be breaking it down with the rhythm.
I don't even like imitating them because I don't know what they be doing. But I'm saying that the point is that it's not just the idea of repeating the same thing over and over again, right? Because first of all, it wouldn't have made sense for him to say, "Don't repeat that, repeat this."
Yeah,
because that's essentially what people do when you have the idea of like the quote unquote Lord's Prayer, right? We think about like Psalms 136, where it literally says, "For His mercy endures forever," 26 times, right? Right?
Yeah.
All the little different things that it says in there. And His mercy endures forever, 26 times. When we think about the tabernacle service, what we're even talking about, you sat up here and you repeated the same thing. You did the exact same thing over and over again 2 times a day. The same thing you did in the morning, you do the same thing in the evening time over and over again. It's not about the idea of repeating a thing, the same thing over and over again. It's about the vain repetition. It's about you doing it and it don't be no heart behind it. Right? It don't mean anything. If you're doing anything and the thing that you're doing is just for the simple fact of you doing it, that's some vain repetition because you're repeating this thing and you're doing it in vain. Look at Isaiah Yeshayahu 1 and let's see 11. Start reading that 11.
What use to me are your many slaughterings, declares Yahweh. I have had enough of the Sunday offerings of rams and the fat of fat beasts. I do not delight in blood of bulls or the lambs or goats.
Look at that. Of course he delights in those things. Mm-hmm. But over here he's saying he don't. Oh, but first of all, he's talking to who he talking to? Rulers of Sedom. Right? Mm-hmm. You people of Gomorrah. Remember, he don't like this, what they got to give anyway. Right? But there's things that he likes. But look, if it's from these wicked people, he don't want that. Keep on going.
It says, when you come to appear before me, who has required this from your hand to trample my courtyards? Stop bringing futile offerings, incense. It is an abomination to me.
Abomination. There's that word again.
New moon, Sabbath, the calling of gatherings. I am unable to bear unrighteousness and assembly.
Look, even right there, he's saying all this stuff that he like. But then we understand that this is why he don't like it from these people. He loves the Shabbat and these set apart gatherings, but not from unrighteous people, though.
Right.
That's the difference, right? That's the difference, right? They're doing they're doing the repetitions, but it don't mean nothing if the heart ain't in it, right? What did verse 14 say?
It said, "My being hates your new moons and your appointed times. They are trouble to me. I am weary of bearing them. And when you spread out your hands, I hide my eyes from you. Even though you make many prayers, I do not hear. Your hands have become filled with blood."
See, we already seen from the other verses we was looking at, right, that the Most High don't want right things from wicked people. New moons, appointed times. He loved that stuff. Shabbat. He made that stuff specifically for us. But when you wicked, he don't want that. He the one that made this whole thing with the blood of the bulls and goats and lambs and all that stuff. He the one who came up with it. Of course he delights in it, but not from wicked people. And so when you're not connected, when your heart is not in the situation, now you putting forth these vain repetitions. That's the difference. Right? When we think about the idea of traditional, even when you think about traditional prayers, they're made up of a bunch of scriptures put together. Right? And so when we see the idea of offering prayers at a specific time, even if you was going to say they was traditional prayers that you read from a prayer book, that in and of itself is not what we see Yeshua talking against over there, because we see where the point of all of that is that people not having their heart in the right place is indeed a problem. If you look at Joshua 1 and verse 8, what's that say right there?
So do not let this book of Torah depart from your mouth, but you shall meditate on it day and night, so that you guard to do according to all that is written in it. For then you shall make your way prosperous and act wisely.
No, it says only a little bit. It's written like the first 2 pages, right? Oh, because that's sometimes what the Christians be like, man.
When you sit up there and think about how do you practically apply what Joshua is demanding for Israel to do as they go into the land, how else would that be but for you to sit up? How do you meditate on the Torah unless you're actually looking at it?
Right. And then we know from the way I made today, when I asked him, like, what the Messiah said, when he was tempted, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes out of the mouth of Yah. Yah is his father. So in Deuteronomy 8:3, it tells you what has been written. So we are to listen to every word. You feel me?
So when we look at this again, we're thinking about the altar of incense. We're thinking about the fact that the Most High, per his Torah, has put in place these specific times of the day that the altar of incense was burnt. We also understand that the altar of incense gives us a picture of prayers going up to the Most High. And so when we put those things together, we have, in the scripture, for us, we have these times of the day, Boker, Erev, where the Most High has made these times, which could literally be these times of prayer. There's times when you're supposed to send up the incense, sending them up, right? With the caveat of you doing it with a pure heart, not just going through acts, but actually doing this thing and it be a delight as it here, what's it say over here? Psalms 1 and 2. What's that say?
It says, but his delight is in the Torah of Yahweh. He meditates on his Torah day and night.
It's a delight. It's interesting that when he's doing it, right?
Yeah.
Day and night. It's easy for you to meditate on something day and night if going into the day and going into the night, you've rehearsed the things. Right? If you already rehearsed the things at Boker, it's easy for you to meditate on what you've rehearsed in the day because you just got finished rehearsing it at Boker. Right? It's easy for you to meditate about something at night if you've already rehearsed the thing at Erev. Right? A practical application of this idea of meditating on the word of the Most High, the Torah, day and night. It's not talking about that's all you do 24 hours. I mean, you do got to go and do other things, right? You do got to go out there and get your harvest, right? You got to go out there and gather up your whatever you got to gather. You got to do all of your things. But we're able to look at these things over here when we see, going between Psalms and going between what Joshua said over there, is that we could understand how we could even get to the place of meditating on something day and night if we understand from the pretext of what we see with the altar of incense being this thing that you did or burned at the going in the introductory phases of the day and the night, which being Boker and being Erev. And so when we see things like 1 Thessalonians 5 and 17, where it says pray without ceasing, I don't know if it's literally thinking about you sitting there. You can't just always be right? Because again, we look at Yeshua, it's more than you just having a mind or thinking towards a particular thing. He gives us the example of saying literal words. Yeshua does, where again, it's Yeshua. He's one with the Father. He don't really gotta do that. But he kind of does, right? As an example for us. And so again, we look at this whole thing and think about what this typifies for us. It helps us to be able, especially when we think about, what is necessary for us, even in these days and times, right? It's for us to really be able to, how are we really able to withstand the days and the times if we're not, really connected to the Most High and His will and what He has for us. It's easy for us to be able to just really just get on track if we just could do the things that He already prescribed for us. It's not even like making new things up. It's just stepping into the things that He already done put in place. If we're able to put practical application to the tabernacle service you know, that's something that's you don't even got to think about it. It's just right there, right for us.
Yep.
Okay, very good. So let's see here. All right, let's go back over here. Anybody got any thoughts or questions or comments about the altar of incense and prayer and all of that?
You said about a mouthful, a couple mouthfuls.
I have something. Here we go.
Or
Oh, we got
come
something.
here because I can't hear you.
I don't know exactly what was talked about, but the concept of repetitive prayer, the Aharonic blessing, he wouldn't have Aaron and the priest to say the Aharonic blessing over and over again. If that was the case.
Yeah, that's another example when you think about the idea. The idea of repeating a thing is not the thing that Yeshua's talking about or talking against. It's specifically the vain repetitions. If you sit up here, you're just doing a thing just so for one or somebody could see you. You're doing it with not the right heart involved. That's one thing. But there's countless examples of going through a thing, whether it be the fact that the only way that we can meditate on a thing is to have the thing be put in us in the first place.
Right.
And that's from you looking at the words and reading it, right? When you sit up there and vocalize the thing, that's how you're able to meditate on it. And so the idea of repeating, that's just not what it is. It's the vain repetition is you just going through motions and not having your heart be attached to the thing. That's the problem, right? Because really, again, Yeshua, if you take that thought process, all he's doing is saying, don't do what the hypocrites say for you to do. Instead, say this, our Father, which don't make any sense, right?
That reminded me of this guy was joking, talking about, God's name is Art, right? And I was like, huh? His name is Art. He said, the prayer says, Art in heaven. I said, oh, you simple.
Yeah.
Our Father who's art in heaven.
Yeah.
All right, let's finish up the rest of this here, and then we'll be done. I want to where do we stop off at? Start reading that. Start reading that verse 11 over here.
It says, and Yahweh spoke to Moses, saying, wow, when you take the census of the children of Israel to register them, then each one shall give an atonement for his life to Yahweh when you register them, so that there is no plague among them when you register them. Everyone among those who are registered is to give a half shekel according to the shekel of set apart place. 20 gerahs, being a shekel, the half shekel is a contribution to Yahweh. Everyone passing over to be registered from 20 years old and above gives a contribution to Yahweh. The rich does not give more, and the poor does not give less than half a shekel. When you give a contribution to Yahweh to make atonement for yourselves, it says you should take the silver of the atonement for the children of Israel, give it for the service of the tent of appointment, and it shall be to the children of Israel for remembrance before Yahweh to make atonement for yourself.
Okay, very good. So we see over here, we see this thing with the children of Israel and this whole idea of the census for the sons of Israel. And we see that, it didn't matter. Like, it wasn't like you go to some of these conferences with these people and they sit up there and they start going off, they start at the little $20 offerings. All y'all $20 people, y'all come up give y'all $20. All right, now let the $100 people let them come up and give y'all. Okay, now let the $500 people come up and so on and so forth. All of this stuff was about. It was a half a shekel.
Half a shekel.
Right? It was like a half a shekel. Right, and so it was this number that it really basically had the equivalent of really just a tally mark. It just was just. It wasn't like it wasn't breaking you to. It wasn't nothing. Like it was really just knowing who was. It literally was a census count. It was making the count. They knew how many people they had over 20 by being able to count these things over here. It wasn't no popularity. Didn't matter which tribe you was from or what have you, whether your people had more or less. It wasn't about the money thing. It was about the census, right? Knowing who was able to get up and go and fight. And if we was ever to see anything that tells us about some kind of age of accountability, this is the closest thing we have to it over here. Because if you wasn't really able to fight, then you wasn't counted, right? If you wasn't able to go out and go to war, then you was just with the women and children over there in the
tent.
You know what I'm saying? So again, this whole thing, this wasn't about as it says in 15, the rich don't give more, the poor don't give less, right? It was just a half a shekel. That's all it was. And again, they were just counting. They did this census to see over here. And every time we look in the scripture, we see the census really is about, it got to do with, it's connected to war. Okay. So they was just in the event that they had to sit up there and take care of some business. They knew what the numbers was. Okay. All right. Keep on going. 17.
It says, and Yahweh spoke to Moshe, saying, and you shall make a basin of bronze, with its stand also of bronze for washing, and you shall put it in between the tent and the appointment and the slaughtering place, and you shall pour water in it, and Aaron and his sons shall wash it from their hands and their feet, and and when they go into the tent of appointment, or when they come near the slaughter place to attend to burn an offering made by fire to Yahweh, they wash with water, at least they die. It says, and they shall wash their hands and their feet, lest they die. And it shall be a law forever to them, to him and his seed throughout their generations.
Okay, very good. This is interesting because when we look at this, right, when we think about what's going on with them washing their hands and their feet, right, they're doing a thing, and it matters what they're doing, but I would say that the thing that they're doing is more symbolic than functional. If I'm doing something, the only thing I wash is my hands and my feet. It don't really make my whole self be clean, right? So it's not about that necessarily. It's about kind of but the importance of it, right? It said they wash with water lest they die. That's not to say that this thing that they're going through is not an important thing. It's pretty important if the consequence for you not doing it is death, right? But at the same time, it's this thing that they're doing that I think what it means, I would say is more important. What it signifies, I would say, is more important than the idea of what's actually happening. Because I don't know if they had soap in there either. You know what I mean? I think it was just a basin with water in it. But they just went in there. They washed their hands and they washed their feet. I think it had more of a symbolic significance, more so than like cleanliness or what have you.
What was it made out of again? I read
The
it.
bronze.
Bronze.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I know a lot of the metals got antimicrobial properties to them.
Yeah. So bronze, I think bronze is like brass and copper mix. Let me see what this says. Oh, brass. What does this say now? Copper, something with that metal. So it's saying copper. But it was my understanding that it was some kind of mixture of copper. But again, it was this, like if you like if somebody ever gave you one of them like little copper bracelets where you sit up there and you see that it like turning your your arm colors. But I think what that is actually is it's drawing stuff out of you.
Oh, really?
And so you sit up there and say, oh, this must be fake or whatever because it's making your arm green. But really, I think it's actually sucking toxins out of your body.
Oh, okay, I never heard of that.
Yeah, because they got those back braces and those elbow and arm things just loaded with copper mechanism things in there.
Yeah,
it's supposed to do something to your bones and your pressure and all that.
So from that standpoint, you could see where, something like that, but even still, it's not as if they're sitting there. They just, they're reaching their hand in there. It's more about the work that they're doing being this work where it's a cleansing kind of a picture that you're doing there. I'm saying more so than the idea of you like you didn't go there and wash up with like a rag and some soap and all of that. Right. It was more of a symbolic thing, when they went to enter in, they it's like you got your mind right first. You know what I'm saying? You was ready to put your hands and your feet to righteousness, right? And so you cleaning all of that stuff off and moving forward from there. And so, that's what we see there with the brazen altar. And again, we thinking about this. They're doing this minimum twice a day because they was going in on their way in to mess with the menorah and to set up the incense of the altar. They was going sacrifice their lamb that they were going to sacrifice in the day and in the evening, and then whatever else offering that whatever else anybody brought, throughout the day. And so, going in, that's how they just set it off at the brazen altar. Okay, let's just finish up with this here. 22.
And you already spoke to Moshe saying, and take for yourself choice spices, 500 shekels of liquid myrrh, and half as much, 250 of sweet smelling cinnamon, and 200. I know, right? You see that sweet smelling cinnamon? I know that's rough. That's good. And 250 of sweet smelling cane, and 500 acacia, according to the shekel of the set apart place, and a hin of olive oil. And you shall make from these a set apart atoning oil, a compound blend, the work of a perfumer, and it is set apart anointing oil. And with it you shall anoint the tent of the anointment, and the ark of the witness, and the table and its utensils, and the lampstand and its utensils, and a slaughtering place of incense. on the slaughtering place of ascending offering with its utensils, and the basin and its stand. And you shall set them apart, and they shall be most set apart. Whatever touches them is to be set apart. Um, and and you shall anoint Aaron and his sons and set them apart to serve as priests to me, and speak to the children of Israel, saying, this is a set apart anointing oil to me throughout your generations. It shall not be poured on the flesh of man, and make no other like it, according to its composition. It is set apart to you. Whoever compounds any like it, or whoever puts any of it on a stranger, shall be cut off from his people. Yahweh said to Moshe, take the sweet spices, uh, fragrant gum, and cinnamon, and galbanon,
I wonder what that is.
and clear frankincense, with these sweet spices, all in equal amounts. Then you shall make of these an incense, a compound work, a perfumer, salted, clean, set apart. And you shall beat some of it very fine, and put some of it before the witness, in the tent of the appointment, where I meet you at. It is most set apart to you. And the incense which you make, do not make any for yourselves according to its composition. It is set apart to you, for Yahweh. Whoever makes any like it to smell it, he should be cut. He should be cut off from his people.
Okay, very good. So we see that they made the oil to anoint the priests and to anoint the actual all the things in the tabernacle and all the parts and all of that. This oil that you were supposed to make for those purposes only, right? It wasn't like common. So you sit up there and you see people sit up there, and if they sit up there trying to sell you the temple oil, don't buy that stuff, because he said don't use this for no other purposes but for that. So anybody who wants to sit up there and put these fragrances together and make some incense and using this formula, you out here sinning.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because it said that you're not supposed to be making this stuff. If you try and make it so that you can smell like it, then that's literal sin.
They probably try it, like, you smell like the temple. What you doing? You smell like the altar, man. Hey, you don't smell this dude, man. You smell.
They had that know what it smelled like, because the priests will smell like. Hold on, you got some of that,
right?
But when we think about this, right, I think when you think about this in terms of, again, the altar of incense, because they made this incense, they give you the ingredients for the incense that they burn over there, as well as the oil. But when we think about this and think about the fact that you have this thing that's dedicated only to the Most High, you have this thing that's only for that specific purpose that you offer unto Him. And so when we think about, again, kind of wrapping all this stuff up, when we think about the idea of, the incense altar, offering that altar, that incense unto the Father, that sweet smelling aroma that you offer unto the Father, that He's pleased, going through these acts with a pure heart, and doing it as you prepare to go into your day, or as you prepare to go into your night, this thing that's kind of setting off your goings outs, right? And your and for some people, just setting off your comings in, right? You're kind of setting the mode, and you're preparing the atmosphere for the purposes of the Most High, right? When we kind of get ourselves to be kind of in this kind of almost regimented kind of a place, right? It helps us to stay on track, right? You got no. How can your mind wander into a bunch of foolishness after you just got finished meeting with the Most High? It's kind of hard. Not to say that it can't happen, but you're making it harder for those types of things to happen if we look over at the temple worship and use that as a pattern for how we live our lives, right? When we think about the things that was put in place for the tabernacle, and again, us actually being the tabernacle, when we try to align ourselves up in that way, it's only bringing us closer to the Most High.
It's like spiritual maintenance. It's maintenance. You know what I mean? The temple had that maintenance. The temple gotta have some maintenance. Keep it up, or else what?
You just fall apart.
Exactly. That's what's happening.
Yeah. And so that's I think what we want to try to think about in terms of dealing with this over here, in terms of the altar of incense, the fact that they made this oil, it was only for the Most High, right? You have this part of yourself that's for the Most High, is dedicated to Him, right? It's not like when we think about the fact that Israel got to a place where Israel made herself available to whoever, right? In the worst way, where the Most High asking for Israel to make herself available just only to Him, right? And where we got this thing that's for Him, that we give to Him only our worship, right? We got this thing that we do, and we put Him on the highest, understand that He is indeed the Most High, and we keep Him in His place in our lives, understanding that we live so that we can be pleasing to Him, right? Only. And again, we think about trying to line ourselves up with what went on in the temple. That's kind of the thought behind doing that is just to try to keep us and maintain us in that way of righteousness, moving in the right direction. Okay, so that being said, I think for now we're gonna go ahead and be done with this for now. We will say Shabbat Shalom to everyone. And y'all willing, we will be back on next week and deal with some more of these scriptures. Okay. Shalom.